Hi guys, welcome to the Channel of Love study group, book club. I'm not sure what I'm going to call it today. Okay, we are on chapter 3 and I want to get cracking with this book and not leave big long gaps in between our reading sessions. So it's been a couple of days. We were on Develop an Attractive Personality, chapter 3 of How to Raise Your Own Salary, Napoleon Hill. I believe we're up to the point where Hill was asking Carnegie, now, Mr. Carnegie, what is the next trait of attractive personality? I do have my washing machine going on in the background, but the laundry needs to be done. Okay, so it is what it is. Carnegie answers, it's a keen sense of justice. It seems trite to remind people that an individual cannot hope to become popular and attractive unless he deals justly with others. But man's well-known deficiency in this respect makes it necessary to discuss this subject. Hill, perhaps Mr. Carnegie, it would be well for you to define what you mean by justice. Carnegie, justice, as I use the term here, has reference to intentional honesty. Many people are honest for the sake of expediency, but their brand of honesty is so flexible that they can stretch it to fit any circumstance where their immediate interests can be best extended. It is not that brand of honesty we are analysing. We are talking about deliberate honesty that is so rigidly adhered to that the individual is motivated by it under circumstances that may not be to his immediate benefit, the same as to those that promise the greatest possible reward. Hill, Mr. Carnegie, would you care to name some of the most obvious practical benefits of a keen sense of justice? Carnegie, it establishes the basis of confidence without which no one can have an attractive personality. It builds a fundamentally sincere and sound character which, of itself, is one of the greatest of all attracting forces. It not only attracts people, but it offers opportunities for personal gain in one's occupation. It gives one a feeling of self-reliance and self-respect. It places one in a better and more understanding relationship with one's own conscience. It attracts friends and discourages enemies. It clears the way for that state of mind known as faith. It protects one from the destructiveness of controversies with other people. It helps one to move with more initiative in connection with one's major purpose in life. It never damages one, nor does it subject one to any form of embarrassment. A keen sense of justice not only aids in the development of attractive personality, but it is an asset of priceless value in almost every human relationship. It discourages avarice, greed, and selfishness, and gives an individual much better understanding of his rights, privileges, and responsibilities. A keen sense of justice has a very definite and very great contributory influence in the development of the other traits of attractive personality. Hill, Mr. Carnegie, that brings us down to number 15 of the traits of a pleasing personality, which is Carnegie, appropriateness of words. Among cultured people, there is perhaps no greater source of annoyance than the careless use of words. Oh, okay. Colloquialisms, listen to me with my words. Okay, I'm going to spell it for you. Colloquialisms. Colloquialisms and slang may be passable at times, but the less these are used, the better. The English language is replete with a stock of words possessing every possible shade of meaning. Hence, there can be no valid excuse for the common habit of using words which offend. And of course, the use of profound words at any time is inexcusable. Hill, Mr. Carnegie, could you suggest a method whereby any person may assure himself of an adequate vocabulary? Carnegie, a man of my acquaintance whose accomplishment in the use of words is the most outstanding of any person I have ever known. Devotes 30 minutes daily to reading the dictionary. Yes, literally reading it. He has an astonishing large vocabulary, and I have never heard him use an inappropriate word in my life. Moreover, his choice of words shows that he uses only those which convey the precise meaning intended. Hill. Now that you mention it, Mr. Carnegie, is it true that the words a man uses are the gauge by which he is first judged by others, and they therefore assume tremendous importance as a factor of personality? Carnegie. The words are the media through which a man most often expresses his thoughts, so the nature of the words he uses gives an accurate clue to the type of mind he possesses. This fact leads me to the conclusion that two things should be on the must list of daily habits of every person who has an attractive personality: care in the choice of words and care in the tone of voice in which words are expressed. Hill. As a result of your analysis, Mr. Carnegie, the thought has just struck me. What a wonderful thing a word is. I wish you would continue developing the importance of words for a moment. Carnegie. The ability to express thoughts through the use of words is one of the definite distinctions which separate man from all other living things. Words are the Creator's ingenious means by which man has been given an unlimited outlet for the expression of his thoughts. Words are God's special gift to man. With this gift, the combined knowledge and experience of mankind may become the common property of the humblest individual. If we had no words with which to convey thoughts, the use of the mastermind principle would be exceedingly limited, and every man would be practically compelled to go through life without benefiting by the knowledge gained by men before him. Hill. Now, Mr. Carnegie, what is the 16th trait of an attractive personality? Carnegie. I have termed it emotional control. It has been said by men who have studied the subject that man's emotions control his conduct. The claim seems reasonable. Most of us are directed, not so much by our reason as by our emotions. We do things or we refrain from doing them because of the way we feel. Emotion, therefore, may be defined with one word: feeling. This is a mighty important word, since it defines the motivating force which controls most of our actions throughout life. We certainly owe it to ourselves to learn, as much as possible, about the force which lifts us to great achievements or hurls us downward to defeat. That is precisely what the power of emotion does. In view of this significant fact, we should get control over this power, not only to add to the attractiveness of our personality, but to ensure us against a life of failure and misery. Hill. What do you suggest as the first step towards gaining such control over our emotions, Mr. Carnegie? Carnegie. The first step is to identify the emotions so we will recognise them, and to aid us in this task, a noted psychologist has prepared a list of the most common emotions expressed in our daily lives. There are 7 positive emotions and 7 negative emotions. I shall give you the negative emotions first. The 7 negative emotions are: number 1, fear. There are 7 different forms of fear, which we shall discuss later. Number 2, jealousy. Number 3, hatred and envy. Number 4, revenge and malice. Number 5, greed. Number 6, superstition and distrust. And number 7, anger. Now for the 7 positive emotions, which are love, sex, hope, faith, desire, optimism, and loyalty. That was 1 to 7, by the way. Let me reread those. Now for the 7 positive emotions, which are: number 1, love. Number 2, sex. Number 3, hope. Number 4, faith. Number 5, desire. Number 6, optimism. And number 7, loyalty. In these 14 emotions, one may find the letters of the alphabet of a language that spells either success or failure. These 14 words literally represent the keyboard of the musical instrument of life, on which an individual plays the chords of harmony that lead to happiness in its fullest meaning, or the discords of unhappiness that lead to misery and obscurity. Each of the 14 emotions is related to mental attitude. This is why I have stressed the importance of mental attitude. These 14 emotions represent nothing except mental attitude. They are nothing but feelings or states of mind. More important still, they are subject to organisation, guidance, and complete control by any normal person. Here is the keyboard of life on which an individual may compose the tune that his soul will sing all through life. Hill, in what way has the Creator given man control over this grand score for the symphony of life, Mr. Carnegie? Carnegie, by giving man control over his powers of thought. The only thing the individual has to do is take charge of his own mind and exercise this control. That is something he cannot neglect or avoid without condemning his entire life to the stray winds of chance. Okay. Remember, before we leave this subject, that the point at which an individual begins to take control of his own mind, and this includes emotions, of course, is when he adopts a definite major purpose. Definiteness of purpose is a starting point of all achievement. You see, therefore, how definitely success and failure are related to the 14 emotions. One half of the 14 are harbingers of failure. The other half are success builders. Hill, I dare say, Mr. Carnegie, that anyone who secures a copy of this list of the 14 emotions and who carefully examines himself in connection with each of them on the basis of a definite schedule will make tremendous strides towards gaining control of his emotions. Carnegie, that is correct. A person should construct a check chart and make a habit of rating himself on each one of the emotions daily. The experiment will surprise anyone who attempts it. It may also lead to changes in one's personality, which will agreeably surprise all of his associates. This is a positive approach to self-mastery, the end which must be sought and attained by all who wish to be sure of making life pay. Hill, Mr. Carnegie, you have covered the first 16 of the traits of an attractive personality. What is coming up now, sir? Carnegie, let us call it alertness of interest in persons, places and things. Without the ability to fix one's interest at will on any subject or person and hold it there for whatever time the occasion requires, no person will have an attractive personality. You can pay another person no greater compliment, generally speaking, than that of concentrating your attention upon him when he desires your attention. It has been said that it is a greater accomplishment to be able to listen well than it is to be able to talk well. This is one way in which a person may please others and at the same time acquire usable knowledge. The habit of looking in some other direction, of fidgeting with some pocket gadget when others are talking, is among the worst forms of effrontery. The habit of interrupting when others are speaking is an unpardonable insult. Strong language perhaps, but accurately descriptive of an important fact. Hill, are you implying, Mr. Carnegie, that lack of observation of what is going on around one and failure to notice details is an all too common weakness? Carnegie, precisely that. It is a common weakness that costs people a tremendous price. If one will make a careful study of oneself when conversing with others, He may discover that he can add substantially to his own personality by taking a keener interest in the other fellow's personality. I have often suggested to some of the young men who works with us that if they would become as alertly interested in the associates with whom they work and in their jobs as they do when talking to their sweethearts, the results would show a healthy change in their pay envelopes. Alertness of interest in other people not only serves to please them, but it also provides one with an excellent opportunity to know people by observing their mannerisms. One may learn valuable lessons by observing the faults as well as the virtues of other people, as this habit causes one to take more accurate inventory of himself to make sure he does not display the same faults. Hill. It would seem to me, Mr. Carnegie, that the memory would be associated with this matter of alertness of interest and observation. Am I correct in this assumption, sir? I'm just going to reread the question. Hill. It would seem to me, Mr. Carnegie, that the memory would be associated with this matter of alertness of interest and observation. Am I correct in this assumption, sir? Carnegie. Everyone knows that a good memory is an asset of great value, but not everyone seems to know that one of the greatest functions of a good memory is that of taking accurate inventory of and remembering the characteristics of individual personalities. Such retentiveness always requires keen observation and intensity of interest in ordinary conversations with people. Few conversations annoy a person more than to be introduced to someone a second time without that person showing any sign of recognition. Such situations occur every day. It is no compliment to a man, and especially if he be a man of considerable reputation in his field, to be made to feel that he is so unimpressive and unimportant that someone to whom he had been introduced a second time does not remember him. Conversely stated, nothing pleases a man more than to have people show that they remember him, and favourably. One of New York's largest hotels employs a desk man who has a system by which he remembers practically every person who registers at that hotel a second time, and he never misses if the person is fairly well known to the public. He calls people by their names and lets them know that he recognises them. The manager of that hotel told me that this man is one of the greatest assets of the hotel, and what is still more interesting, he receives almost 3 times as much salary as the job he holds usually pays. It is part of a man's duty, to himself at least, to see everyone he knows, and to recognise his acquaintances in some manner every time he comes within speaking distance of them. Lack of alertness of interest in other people is usually a sign of egotism. One who falls in love with himself will find few rivals. Hill. Everyone readily agrees that an attractive personality is greatly to be desired and sought after. The elements comprising a pleasing personality, which you have presented thus far, will make a wonderful list by which people may compare their own personalities, counting up their assets and their liabilities, if any. You have previously covered the 17 desirable personality traits. What have you in store for me today? Carnegie. The 18th trait of an attractive personality is effective speech. The person who cannot stand on his feet and speak with force and conviction on any subject within the range of his knowledge is under a great handicap as far as the attraction of people is concerned. The same applies to the man who cannot express himself forcefully in ordinary conversations and in small group gatherings such as business conferences. There is a general acceptance of the belief that the ability to dramatise words and express them forcefully at all times, under all conditions, is among the greatest of human achievements. In fact, some people place this power at the head of the list of all personal achievements. Times without number, as we can see by examining the history of mankind, the entire trend of civilization has been influenced by men who could dramatise an idea with the spoken word. We have only to look around us to find men who have risen to great heights of personal achievement because of their ability to sell themselves to other people through dramatised speech. Let it be remembered that in my use of the term speech, I have reference to man's spoken words as a means of influencing others, whether he is speaking to one person or too many. Hill, it might be helpful, Mr. Carnegie, if you were to mention some of the steps one might take to prepare to give an effective speech. Carnegie, by far the most important factor of effective speech is a thorough knowledge of the subject on which one speaks. No amount of dramatic technique will ever take the place of the self-assurance a speaker feels when he knows his subject. Someone whose hobby was terseness of speech once said that a whole course on public speaking could be taught in one sentence. Know what you wish to say and say it with all the feeling you can command, and then sit down. The last two words are important. The time to stop speaking is the exact moment at which you have conveyed the thought you wish to get over, and not 1 second beyond that time. Long-winded speakers generally are boresome, but the short speech will be no less so if it does not say something that people wish to hear and say it effectively. Hill, several times, Mr. Carnegie, you have used the word dramatise in connection with effective speech. Just how is the ability to dramatise acquired? Carnegie, the ability to dramatise speech comes through habit. Therefore, one should begin this habit by speaking forcefully in ordinary conversation. There is the place where great speakers learn the art of effective speech. They practice on every person with whom they converse. They never utter a word without placing back of it the necessary feeling to make it penetrate and affect the mind of the listener. This simple procedure will make an effective speaker of anyone who follows it as a matter of daily habit, and nothing else will. Hill, Mr. Carnegie, in our last discussion, you stressed the importance of the proper choice of words. Will you tell me now, sir, where the proper use of words fits into this business of effective speech? Carnegie, words will not produce effective speech unless they are grouped so as to convey ideas through illustrations and similes that are well within the experience of all. Remember this because it is the utmost importance to all who aspire to become effective speakers. I have heard some well-educated men make speeches which were masterpieces of English, but they failed to influence anyone because they were not properly attuned to the minds of the listeners through the right sort of illustrations. People wish to hear about subjects that help to solve their daily problems, subjects that aid them in their struggle for the necessities and the luxuries of life. People will listen to the discussion of other subjects, but they will be more greatly influenced when discussions are made interesting by dramatisation and illustration. All people resent the use of words which they do not understand, no matter how correctly they may be used. Remember then that the effective speaker must not only use illustrations within the range of his listeners, but he must describe them in words which anyone of ordinary educational advantages may understand. Hill, Mr. Carnegie, what about gestures? I've listened to some speakers who wildly beat the air and pounded the lectern in driving home their points. What is your opinion in this matter, sir? Carnegie, gestures can do only one of two things to a speech, either add to or detract from its effectiveness. If they do not add, they detract. Gestures should therefore be harmonised appropriately with the content of the speech. One should avoid distracting personal gestures, such as running the fingers through the hair, shoving the hands down in the pockets, and fumbling with watch chains or rattling coins. Also, one should avoid slouchy posture of the body. Such mannerisms may imply familiarity and take the minds of the listeners off the speech. Hill, it seems to me, Mr. Carnegie, that a good many of the traits of a pleasing personality may be incorporated right into an effective speech. I'm thinking, for instance, of tone of voice. Carnegie, the tone of voice is important. It should therefore be controlled. High, harsh tones always offend the listener. The low, rich tones are much preferable. A voice that is off tone is as offensive as a musical instrument that is out of tune, and for the same reason, it destroys the harmony of the tone. Here again, remember that one should begin training the tone of voice in ordinary conversation. A well-disciplined voice can convey feeling, not by the mere meaning of words alone, but by the tone of voice which produces either laughter or tears. The effective speaker must learn to distinguish between words that are spoken without feeling and those which depend almost, if not entirely, upon feeling for their influence on the listener. The tone of voice is the instrument by which feeling is conveyed. Hill, you'll agree with me, Mr. Carnegie, that another one of the traits of personality which obviously enters into effective speech is facial expression. Carnegie, the effective speaker must remember to make the expression of his face fit the feeling he wishes to convey. Both the smile and the frown have their appropriate places in speech, but it is important that each should be used only at the right places. The governing rule is that the expression of the face should harmonise with the nature of the thought to be conveyed by speech. Hill, Mr. Carnegie, what ingredient of a speech transmits the all-important feeling or mood of the speaker to the members of his audience and inspires them to react in the way the speaker desires them to respond? Carnegie, enthusiasm is the essential element of effective speech, which gives words the necessary feeling to enable a speaker to project his thoughts into the minds of listeners. It is difficult for anyone to close his mind against the enthusiastic speaker, or to keep his mind from being penetrated by the thoughts of one who speaks with the fire of enthusiasm back of every word. Enthusiasm is very contagious. It is a form of feeling that gives power to words as nothing else will. Hill, if that's the case, Mr. Carnegie, please tell us how one generates this magic power of enthusiasm. Carnegie, the starting point in the development of enthusiasm is sincerity of purpose and a complete belief of the speaker in the thought he is endeavouring to convey to others. Any attempt to frame enthusiasm where it is not actually felt by the speaker will be more than apt to be recognised and resented by the listeners. Here again, the tone of voice speaks so loudly that mere words get in the way and serve only to expose the insincerity of the speaker who does not actually believe in what he is saying. Got a bit lost during that bit, just with the children outside. Okay, we've still got we're okay. We're going to carry on. I'm not going to stop it. We can practice our tolerance, can't we? Flexibility. Okay. Hill, could you tell us, Mr. Carnegie, what is considered to be the most effective speech of all time? Carnegie, the speech which has been delivered more than any other is one of the shortest, one of the most dramatic, one of the most romantic, and sometimes one of the most tragic of all human speeches. It consists of only 3 words: I love you. Yet, I have heard it said that the 3 short words are only incidental to the conveyance of the thought back of them. The thing that counts most, so experts on the subjects tell me, is the tone of voice, the look in the eyes, and the feeling of enthusiasm the speaker sometimes puts back of this speech. When you can explain how one clothes that speech with the necessary feeling to make it effective, you will also know a great deal about how one dramatises any speech with depth of feeling and enthusiasm. It all goes back to sincerity of purpose and desire. We have no trouble in giving feelings to speech when we believe what we are saying. Moreover, if we believe what we say and give our words the right amount of feeling, the world is apt to recognise us as having attractive personalities. Hill, and what is the 19th trait of a pleasing personality, Mr. Carnegie? Carnegie, versatility. It is hardly necessary to mention the obvious fact that people who lack a general understanding of the world in which they live, including at least a surface knowledge of human nature, are seldom interesting or attractive. A general interest in things and people is one of the essentials of flexibility of personality, without which one is seldom attractive, except to a very small percentage of those with whom one associates. With books and educational advantages as plentiful as they are in our country, there is little excuse for any person neglecting to inform himself on a great variety of subjects. Every man should have at least a surface acquaintanceship with the vital topics of the day, especially those which are associated with the political and economic fortunes of his own country. A man should have at least a shade more than a surface knowledge of himself. A man should have at least a shade more than a surface knowledge of himself, for it is true that the man who understands himself knows a great deal about other people, and he is thereby qualified to make himself attractive to them. The man who really knows himself has little difficulty in knowing others, because he is so much like the others. Hill, according to my count, Mr. Carnegie, you are now about to discuss the 20th trait of a pleasing personality, which is, Carnegie, a genuine fondness for people. Everyone who understands dogs knows that a dog instantly recognises people who do or do not like dogs. Moreover, dogs express their recognition in no uncertain terms. People also recognise, with the slightest association, individuals who like people, and they resent those who have a natural dislike for others just as definitely as they are attracted to the person who likes people. The law of retribution always operates so that people are judged and dealt with, not alone by their deeds, but by their dominating mental attitudes, through which they can express their likes and their dislikes with unerring definiteness. It is inevitable, therefore, that the person who dislikes people will be disliked, although he may never openly express his feelings. Through telepathy, every mind communicates with other minds. Therefore, the person who wishes to have an attractive personality is under the constant necessity of watching not only his deeds, but also his thoughts. Hill, what you have just said, Mr. Carnegie, seems to be closely related to what we commonly call a man's temper. Do you wish to explain your idea of temper? Carnegie, I wouldn't expect very much in the way of achievement of a man who has no temper, because the thing we call temper is nothing but uncontrolled emotion, and emotion under control is one of the most essential of all the powers of the mind. Perhaps the greatest injury an uncontrolled temper does is that which results from an uncontrolled tongue. The person with an uncontrolled temper generally has a tongue that is mounted on ball bearings in the middle, so to speak, and swing loosely at both ends with an edge as sharp as a razor blade, and with no regard for whom it cuts. We have all known of such tongues, but we have never been greatly attracted to the owner of any of them. As the washing machine starts to pipe up. Many people talk too much and say too little under the most favourable circumstances, but the man with a bad temper and a ball-bearing tongue often talks when he does not intend to do so and says things that he lives to regret. Such a person obviously does not have an attractive personality. Hill, what have you to say about those who express defeatism and accept failure as their lot in life? Carnegie, nobody cares very much for the person who has abandoned the hope of personal achievement or lacks the ambition to achieve some worthy objective in life. The world will forgive a man for most of his mistakes if he has high aims and definite hopes for their attainment, but it will not forgive him for failure due to indifference or hopelessness. Hill, Mr. Carnegie, is it possible for a man to allow his personal habits to control him through lack of discipline and still remain attractive to other people? Carnegie, excess in the habits of eating, drinking, or sexual relationships destroys personal magnetism and makes the offender an object of derision among all who know him. I shall not preach on morals, but simply say that the man who hasn't enough pride in himself to control these intimately personal habits will more than likely be a failure in everything he undertakes, for these habits generally have associated with them other objectionable habits which make the development and maintenance of an attractive personality impossible. Hill, one of the most common causes of an unattractive personality, I should say, Mr. Carnegie, is the tendency to be grouchy, irritable, nervous, and impatient. Do you care to express yourself on this subject, sir? Carnegie, impatience is nothing but a visible expression of selfishness or lack of self-discipline. Consequently, it never inspires sympathy from anyone. It is a negative mental attitude that is caused usually by intemperate habits in connection with eating, drinking, and sex, which I mentioned before, or is due to poor health brought about by these forms of intemperance. Toxic poisoning, due to improper eating habits, is one of the major causes of impatience and irritability. A doctor once told me that if people would keep their sewer systems as clean as they kept the outsides of their bodies, there would be fewer of them calling for a physician. Hill, what trait of personality is next on the list, Mr. Carnegie? Carnegie, it is humility of the heart. Arrogance, greed, vanity, and egotism are never found in the man who has a pleasing personality. Hill, but isn't humility usually associated somewhat with timidity? Carnegie, not in the sense in which I'm using the term. It means a humble spirit based on the recognition that even the greatest of men are, by comparison with the scheme and plan of life generally, but fragments of the whole. Humility of the heart is the result of a true understanding of man's relationship to his Creator, plus recognition that the material blessings of life are a gift of the Creator for the common good of all mankind. The man who is on good terms with his own conscience and in harmony with his Creator always is humble of heart, and he generally has an attractive personality. Hill, I believe we are down to the 22nd trait, which comprises an attractive personality. Mr. Carnegie, will you name and discuss it, please? Carnegie, I call it good showmanship. Showmanship, as one of the traits of attractive personality, is the combination of several of the other traits, properly blended and used. It is the ability to combine facial expression, tone of voice, appropriate personal adornment, choice of words, control of the emotions, courtesy, effective speech, versatility, mental attitude, sense of humour, emphasis and tactfulness, in such a manner as to dramatise any circumstance or occasion so as to attract favourable attention. As the term showmanship is used here, It has no reference to the common habit of wisecracking, clowning, or gossiping, which is used too often as a means of attracting attention. And the next trait of an attractive personality is somewhat related to this one. It is called clean sportsmanship. The man who can win without boasting and lose without squealing generally has the admiration of other people. The colleges advocate clean sportsmanship in athletics because educators know that this habit becomes a part of one's character, and as such it becomes of great benefit in human relationships outside of athletics. Clean sportsmanship is an important trait of attractive personality because it inspires people to cooperate in a friendly manner. Hill, speaking of a friendly manner, Mr. Carnegie, I have always felt that a man with a good personality reveals it when you first meet him, by the way in which he shakes hands. Carnegie, the ability to shake hands properly, has a great deal to do with this subject of an attractive personality. The person who understands how to shake hands effectively can convey very definite impressions of many different types by this means. The man who is skilled in the art of handshaking has a big advantage over the man who lacks this studied accomplishment. Hill, well, Mr. Carnegie, we have come down to the last of the traits of a pleasing personality. What is it, sir? Carnegie, it is personal magnetism. Let us be frank at the outset and say that personal magnetism is a polite way of describing sex energy, for that is precisely what it means. Now, we need not evade the admission that sex energy is something with which an individual is born, and it therefore cannot be developed by personal effort. Sex energy is nature's own device, with which she creates and perpetuates every living thing, from God's smallest creature to his greatest handiwork, man. I see no reason, therefore, for subterfuge in connection with the analysis of sex emotion as one of the most important traits of personality, but I do see a reason for making it plain that this universal power adds attractive qualities to the personality only when it is controlled and used properly. Hill, what is the method of control you refer to? Carnegie, I have reference to transmutation, which means the diversion of sex emotion from physical sex expression into whatever constructive purpose one wishes to carry out. It is a well-known fact that when a man who is highly sexed organises this irresistible creative force and places it back of his occupational endeavours, he has but little difficulty in persuading people to cooperate with him. The emotion of sex must be considered as one of the most important factors of an attractive personality. Therefore, I have given here a clue from which anyone smart enough to recognise it may add greatly to his ability to influence people through his personality. And that's that. Woo, we ended on that note. Okay, cooperation and friendship are two assets that can be had only by first giving them. Chapter 4 is employ applied faith. Okay, guys, that's chapter 3. Read. I was going to say done and dusted, but I didn't want to say that. Okay, but that's chapter 3 completed. Okay, so until chapter 4, much love. Take care. Bye for now.